Guys, it's been a while. We apologize. Welcome back to the Harbor site. And I'm always here with the talented Miss Capra.
Yay!
Whoop, 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 whoop. And then our Illuminati follower, Johnny Slicks, who is...
That's not my title.
Dark
For those that don't know, it's not your title.
That's not my title.
One video. Believe it or not, Johnny was actually a Marine. So we have to keep putting that disclaimer out there to actually let him know.
You're starting to look like a pirate.
I'm fine being a pirate.
And then our special guest, I'm super excited to have him technically back on the channel, even though he has never been on the channel.
It's coming, I promise.
It's coming, we promise. Is Brian Bishop from, can we say ODG?
Yes, ODG USA.
ODG USA. Good friend, and for a long time now, actually. Yeah, for a long time. And I got a little upset the other day. For those who follow me on the Instagram, which is right here. Right, Ken? Right here. Is I saw a tweet. Mike Ritland posted a tweet.
Do you want me to read this and just get everybody up to speed, or?
Well, I'm gonna start with the thing. So, Hillary Clinton, the lovely Hillary Clinton, posted a tweet saying about Eddie being pardoned by President Trump, and it said, "This is disgusting,
Grotesque.
This is grotesque." And I just it blew my mind. So I reposted it, and of course it blew up, and I lost a bunch of followers, which apparently I don't know how they even came to my page in the first place.
Right.
But
that Gillette ad.
Yeah, that was that Gillette ad that got me. Which we'll talk about that also soon. Anyways, so that's what started this, and I was laying in bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, we need to talk about this, because I was just a little upset. So, babe?
Yes, so I'm just going to read a little bit of the recent news. It had been reported that President Trump is preparing to review pardons for some U.S. service members accused of crimes, war crimes, and that he could pardon the service members as early as Memorial Day or around that time. The President has asked the Justice Department to prepare the necessary paperwork for that time frame, the Times reported, citing two unnamed U.S. officials. Gallagher, a 15-year Navy SEAL, is charged with premeditated murder, accused of stabbing and killing a critically wounded ISIS fighter during the 2017 deployment to Mosul. He was also accused of shooting some unarmed civilians. He is pled not guilty, and his trial is set to begin May 28th.
That's some pretty serious allegations.
Yeah, that's...
Which I think two words here we want to focus on is accused and allegations.
Right. Yeah.
Before we get into the data, I just want to, Brian, I just want to know, before you know any of this, and you really, right out the gate, initial thoughts.
Well...
From your background and from what
Right.
we've done in the past,
Right.
what would your initial, when you hear something like this, being a veteran that have served in this capacity?
I want to know more. The second that anything pops up on social media and is of this ilk or nature because of all of the misinformation and fake news and all of the crap that goes on with social media and just the internet in general, the second anything like this comes across the radar screen, I'm like, okay, I need to know more information. And so then I start digging, doing more research. And unfortunately with this particular thing, it seems like lately there's just been a lot of blasting veterans lately, or not, active duty members, veterans and active duty members on social media and on the internet. And so I had my head down and was working, and this was another thing that came across the radar screen. One of them was the case of those Navy SEALs and that Green Beret that happened, and so there's just a lot of negativity, and so I partitioned myself from this, and then as this thing developed and started to snowball and come across more and more and more, I looked into it a little bit deeper, and I'm, after doing some cursory research and then doing deeper research, it's really disappointing to see what this has turned into, because I think that it's more political than anything. I think it's extreme. It's a political shit fight, is what it is.
He's not wrong.
Johnny?
Initial ideas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I wanted to know more about it, just because there's a lot of allegations, his charges, killing a wounded ISIS prisoner, who was under his care in 2017, shooting 2 civilians in Iraq and opening fire on crowds. And then he has 12 counts of murder, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. But that's like the first thing we hear about. I don't think that's right. It doesn't stand. We don't get to know anything about him. We just get to know what he is accused of doing. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I want to know more about it. But like, you type in his name on Google and everything's like, allegedly did this, charge of doing this. And say, you know, he's a 19-year veteran, served 15 years with the SEALs. Like, he's the first non-Marine to graduate sniper school. Like, it doesn't say anything about his accomplishments, and it just makes me wonder, like, what is this really about? What does this come down to, and where's it going to go?
Which you found out some things.
I found a lot of things, yeah.
My initial thought when I hear about stuff like this is BS. Like, and everything that we've seen over the past war, so... You know, those who found this video don't know me. I served from 2000 to 2012, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I have very good friends who are several times up on murder charges. And it's because some random person gets like a frog, you know, like something up their ass, and it's like, well, that's not right. And they blow it out of proportion, or it's the enemy using propaganda against us to throw our servicemen under the bus because we have social media and news and they have access to it now. Like this, I don't feel like this was as much of a problem as like in World War II. It was a little bit in Vietnam, but that's just when correspondents started going over to Vietnam. And now, I mean, you know, as in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was nuts. We had constantly had Al Jazeera was out there. I mean, there would be reports, like propaganda reports on us before on a mission before we even got back to the base. Before we got back to the FOB, it would be like on Yahoo News that we so-and-so killed so-and-so. It was like, what? Oh, yeah. I was just there. There was no no civilians there.
Yeah, you massacred half the village by the time you got back to your...
Right. And so like initially when I, you know, and they, of course, like it all came out, everybody was always like, okay, this never happened. We apologize, just like the thing with with Fox Company Marsoc. Over a decade later, they're like, oops. Sorry, guys.
And they ruined a lot of careers over that.
And those lives are forever changed. And then they come out and go, "We were totally wrong. Sorry." Too late, man. Yeah. Too late. And that's what I feel like this is starting to look like again. You've got a guy, 2 Bronze Stars with a V, with V for Valor, Meritorious Unit Commendation, President Unit Citation, 2 Navy Comms, 3 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals, 1 with a V, 4 Good Conducts. But all of a sudden, the guy's a piece of shit. I'm not buying it.
Well, and the other thing was like the biggest thing that I was like digging for was really to understand everything that they're accusing him of. I looked at probably 30 different sites, you know, on both sides of the spectrum. Half of them are like changing the story. It's all over the place. Like I read one where it said he killed a teenage girl, and then I read another one where it said it was a ISIS member that was in his care, a prisoner in his care. And then I read another one that said it was a teenage boy. And then it said was it a dude running at him with like a knife in a fight, or was it a little chick laying down on the side of the road? Like the way that they're wording it, nobody even knows what to believe because they're all different. Everyone's reporting it differently.
So you're technically the only like didn't serve civilian.
Right.
Like when you see stuff like this, what is your...
Well, initially, like if you don't know anything about it and you're going to say, oh man, he killed all these civilians, he killed a child, a girl, he killed an old man, this is awful. It's like, sounds like freaking Game of Thrones over there. She's just Takaris, let's just kill them all. Like, It sounds scary. But like, I know better, and I know that this isn't a peaceful people that were trying to like coexist with him, and he just was like, that's not what happened. But if I didn't know that was the way things were, if I wasn't married to you, if I didn't understand a lot of what happens overseas, I would be like, wow, this guy killing kids.
Yeah. Last night when I did my research and I came across all of his awards, his career track, that's when the bullshit flag flew up. And I was like, me too. You've got an 18-year veteran here of the Naval Special Warfare community who's done 8 combat deployments. He's the troop chief, and now all of a sudden he's going to stab an unarmed combatant to death in front of like 30 dudes that are standing around
young
watching.
Guys.
Yeah.
Brand new SEALs.
Yeah. False. I don't believe that happened. I don't think that I can't see a guy with that experience level just doing something like that out of the blue.
He was constantly on top. Like, he always, when he came back from a combat deployment, he always strived to do something more.
Right.
Like, corpsman, attached to a Marine unit, then he attended sniper school, deployed, attended BUDS, became a SEAL, deployed, became a BUDS instructor. Like, he was always, once he came back, went up.
Yeah, it's always leveling up his whole career.
So, a couple of things that I want to dive in here, and then if you can keep me on track, at the end of this, I want to talk about the political side of this, and I think this has gotten so big that it has brought a lot of attention that has made it even more confusing. You know, politics and the community and everything. But there's two big points here that I really want to talk about. Was one, war crimes, and then cannibalism, which is essentially what I think started this was eating our own inside the veteran, not even the veteran, active duty community, and within the soft community, just cannibalism, eating our own. So the first one that I really want to talk about is war in general. Like, I don't want to be insensitive and and I know people are going to be like, well, the Geneva Convention and rules and all this kind of stuff. But speaking from experience, when we were in Iraq, it was like, initially it was not a problem. Go fight a war to win. And then it was like, hey, go fight a war, tie one hand behind your back, and then report to me your failures.
And then it became, tie both hands behind your back and blindfold yourself and see how successful you are then.
Right. And like, I experienced that, and that was super frustrating. And unfortunately, like, I can stand here right now and tell you, like, on next Monday, on Memorial Day, I will be like celebrating the lives of some of my buddies who died because they were tied, we had our hands tied behind our back, or because we needed to work with this other unit in country, which the intel got linked. So there was IEDs put in place, and now those guys aren't alive anymore because we had to, like...
or all the green on blue that happens because
right.
of, fundamentalist insurgents that infiltrate the ranks and become sleepers, and then they wait for their perfect opportunity.
But so Brian, go fight a war, but you have to fight it by these rules.
Right.
And if you don't fight it by these rules, your own country is going to hold you accountable.
Right.
And everybody that's watching this is probably like, well, that sounds legit. Okay, it does until you've ever fought a war. It's not clear cut. There's not like the days of lining up soldiers on a field and going at it. Those days are long gone, man. Yeah. It's chaos. It's fog. There's no black and white. It's all gray, and it's an impossible job, man. It's an impossible job to send our men and women overseas to fight a war, then hamstrung them on how to fight that war, and then like send them to jail afterwards, right, because you feel like they didn't do something. Like one of our guys at MARSOC was on trial twice, and both times, one was at the Hell House, and he saved dudes, right, but it was like he used excessive force. People were getting shot and dying all around it. You talking about excessive force?
Well, and let's I'm glad you brought that up, because that particular time frame, there was another incident, that whole thing with Kevin Seitz, that embedded journalist that was with our battalion same time, because I was over there, that was my battalion, he was in my battalion. We had a situation where a Marine went into this mosque that was being held by combatants, and they fought through and wounded these guys. And then they swept back around to re-clear, and there was one guy, I think he was still alive or barely alive, and this Marine came by and saw him and filled him in. And the reason he did that was because the day prior, there were two insurgents in a room that were playing dead, and he was holding security in the hallway, and two Marines went in that room to check these guys, and one rolled over and had a grenade, and the grenade exploded and severely wounded one Marine, killed the other one, and then the Marine in question that shot the guy in the mosque had a piece of shrapnel hit his face and was wounded in the exchange. So those are the type of tactics that the insurgents were employing in that particular battle. So to go into the mosque the next day, the day before you were wounded while these guys were playing possum, you're going to do what you have to do to protect yourself and your fellow Marines. And furthermore, there was an ROE at the time, weapons free.
Yeah.
A weapons free ROE means you have the right to engage anyone in the battle space at your discretion. Period. That's what a weapons-free ROE is, at your discretion.
And that's what I don't think people fully understand, like, that didn't live it.
Right.
So, like
Hillary.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
Like
yeah,
Hillary?
you don't get a say,
Right.
man. Like, I'm sorry.
Right.
And you don't get to judge, especially after your fucking track record and the shit that you pulled.
Hillary.
Like, I cannot believe that you would tweet that.
Right.
And like, it's kind of like what you talk about, and this is something that, since you explained it to me, it's helped me to understand so much better, like, about what special operations and teams like this do. A team of SEALs, a team of Raiders going in, it's almost like a surgeon. Instead of going at something and we're just gonna, give you this med and it'll knock it all out.
Right.
Right? And you got all kinds of side effects, and you got a yeast infection and all this other bullshit.
It's just getting real. Just drop that one, too.
Instead, you're talking about, no, we're going to take in these 8 guys and we're going to go perform surgery on the
Right.
situation. And, for people who don't quite understand, like to just the general public who's out there and they're reading these kinds of stories and they're just imagining all this stuff in their heads, they're probably creating stories. It's like, this is such propaganda. It's such bullshit. You can't, especially somebody sitting up there on our high horse who doesn't want to answer when people are asking for help and lets
Right.
a bunch of our people die, to go there and to try to put this out there in the media just so that you can attack somebody who previously attacked you. That's like what you were getting at. It's complete.
Go kill ISIS, but don't do it too good.
And they're not playing by our
Do it
rules
quietly.
also.
Yeah, do it quietly, and
Yeah.
don't let anybody find out that you
Are helping.
Right. I mean, I think it's grotesque that there was such a dereliction of duty that she had as the Secretary of State, had an ambassador die on her watch, completely ignored all the requests for support and additional security in that particular area, and then didn't follow up when people needed help, and then also had 18 counts of mishandling classified information.
And destroyed the evidence.
Right, Bear. It's all good, bro.
Sit down. And
It's all good. Right.
But this case is grotesque.
Yeah, but this is grotesque. Meanwhile, this guy's been locked up this whole time
Right.
and away
And
from
not
his
even,
family.
it's even sad, they were completely treated guilty. They weren't even given normal things like medical treatment and
What?
food and...
No, I'm talking, like Johnny brought that up earlier when we were talking about it, he was saying that this whole case is being handled as if you're saying, like, guilty, not...
Oh, guilty
Yeah.
until proven innocent. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote about that on the page 2 of your notes.
Oh.
If you head to page 2 and look at big picture, you'll see it.
But I mean, basically, he was saying, like, this whole thing across the board is being handled as if he's guilty out the gate, instead of, the American way of you're innocent until proven guilty.
Right, and that's how the media and that's how all of these talking heads have portrayed the information. Like, going back to the notes,
Well, here, before we get into the media
Right.
side, the second thing I want to talk about
Well, it's
is
just innocent until proven guilty.
before we get into, like, I'll call it the bumblefuck of what this country has done to this case, is us eating our own. And I don't know if this is the case, but we've had a uptick of what Josh Hansberger calls cannibalism. As if instead of us, like, having each other's backs, we just attack one another and throw each other under the bus.
vilify anyone that we choose to.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
And
or
inside, I mean, we see it in the veteran community, especially, like, in veteran business. It's like, so-and-so's talking shit about so-and-so, and it's like, and that goes against everything that I'm trying to push. I'm like, I stand
Right.
on a pedestal and say, these guys are the greatest guys in the world because work ethic, their aptitude, their morals, and then you've got two veterans going at each other, and we've had it in business. There's, like, veteran companies that attack us for no reason, out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
Out of the
Just
blue.
They see us as threat or competition, and they're like, oh, no, I don't want success. I don't want you to succeed.
Instead, we're like, that's awesome, man. Good
Yeah.
for you. Like Brian, ODG, if I was still banging the STS drum, I'd be like, you're a competitor. No, I want to end you. No, dude, like, if a guy is going to work hard and be successful, be freaking happy for him, but it doesn't. It turns into this weird insecurity thing that we do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, now you see it inside service. You
Right.
see it to where guys are like his young SEALs. And you know what? I'm almost wondering, and this is completely speculation, and I'll say that, it's an opinion, it's speculation, there's zero fact, but just my experience and based off what I have seen in the past, is there a chance that these young guys had a problem with this senior chief fucking coming down on some entitled young SEALs that felt like they were hot shit because they graduated buds and they got into their first team and they went overseas to bust caps in ISIS, and this chief was like,
during a rather notable operation too.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this
the
chief
push into Mosul was a big deal.
Right.
Big hard deal. That was their last stronghold in Iraq.
So, but before that, all the the deal. Teams go through training, a lot of training, like workups to go on deployment. Do you think he was like hard on these guys? Like, keep your fucking weapons clean. Are your batteries charged? Like all the different pre-deployment training and all the different workups, and your personal gear and patrolling and shooting. Like, this guy was probably hard on him, as a chief should be on a team, right?
There's a lot of news articles that say how strict he was. He was number 1 E6 in his command, number 1 chief in his command.
The guy was probably, honestly, I'll tell you right now, I've met guys like this, and I don't want to give them their names. I still love them, but the guy was probably a dick to be on a team with because he probably expected excellence all the time. So he went out there, operated. The guys saw an opportunity to throw him under the bus, and they did because they didn't like him because he was a dickhead.
And then it got out of hand, and now this is where we are.
And now, and it turned into a freaking monster. And that is my personal opinion.
Yeah, you're basically talking about me. I was like that. I was super attention to detail and
hard on your guys, right?
Super hard on my guys.
But it's because you wanted them to live.
Right.
One.
Yeah, everybody's gonna go home.
Everybody's gonna go home.
And if you dick off,
yeah,
and you don't do your job, then somebody's gonna get killed, and then.
And that's gonna be on you.
And that's on me. Yeah, because I'm the leader.
Yeah, and so as much as that sucks, while you're on the team, it's like it keeps people alive, man, and that's the difference between like an amateur and a professional. And I was a young recon Marine too, and I thought my shit didn't stink, but it did. You're young, you don't know better, but as you get older, you realize like, oh, this is serious, and you become a professional. Are you a professional when you graduate buds, or you come out of ITC or the Q course? No, you're a baby. You're a little baby special operations guy, and you need to grow into that.
Yeah, and your real learning doesn't start occurring until you're on the job with your team.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like God, I hate to, it's gonna like make me seem older, but I feel like this younger generation of entitlement.
Younger generation.
Of entitlement is now entering.
You're dating us. You're dating us.
I know. Is entering special operations with that same entitlement ideals that we're all equal and we all got here together, and and we should all be be treated a certain way, and I feel like this is a portion of that kind of outcome.
So what were you going to say? You were kind of dipping in a little bit more to the politics.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the reminder. The going back and, just looking at everything last night and then looking at the notes today, which is pretty much all the talking heads are out there. It's a total guilty until proven innocent attitude on the internet, on some of the news stations that I saw, and just from some of these comments here in the notes. I'm really disappointed in General Krulak for his comment.
I was blown away.
If President Trump follows through on reports that he will mark Memorial Day by pardoning individuals accused or convicted of war crimes, he will betray these ideals and undermine decades of a president and American military justice that has contributed to making our country's fighting force the envy of the world. No, sir. Our performance on the battlefield is what makes us the envy of the world.
I liked Krulak. I think that he has, I don't know how old he is now, but something is not right, because that blew me away.
I mean, pre-GWAT, so there's that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just kind of...
Johnny dropped that little gem on me to...
Yeah, I was very surprised. He's 77.
And that attitude right there points directly at a guilty until proven innocent
right,
attitude.
and because of that, right, like now General Krulak, a former commandant of the Marine Corps, said that. Then what is the American people going to think?
Exactly. It's like the leader.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're immediately going to go, oh, well, if Krulak says this, he's guilty. Mm-hmm. Burn him to the ground.
And then court's report saying that the president is thereby creating a climate that condones war crimes, undermines commanders' authority in the field, and ignores the Geneva Conventions. What crimes? What crimes have been committed? Nobody's put forth any evidence.
Zero evidence.
Zero evidence.
And let's talk Geneva Convention. What?
Yeah, Geneva Convention is for fighting another uniformed conventional force.
We're fighting an ideal. The Geneva Convention, like I get the Geneva Convention. It's a good thing. It came out of something very serious, and it needed to be.
Right.
Okay, but we are not fighting an enemy. They don't give a shit about the Geneva Convention. So what were you on the same thing in Krulak? What did the judge say that you found?
Gary Solis, former military judge, prosecutor. He calls himself an ex-Marine.
That says a lot right there.
And Vietnam War vet says he, Trump, is a serial draft evader who wants to play general. He's hopping on the whole, what do they call him, Trump? Cadet bone spurs. He's hopping on that whole thing about how Trump's a draft dodger and draft evader.
So I read this today, and I thought this was pretty interesting, the way that they made you think about it. The outcome of this case is expected to unravel the fabric of our nation's SEALs teams. At the very least, sources have agreed it would expose a massive cultural gap in how our young service members are approaching a war as something glamorous, sexy, and even easy, rather than what it is: bloody, raw, brutal, requiring life-changing decisions and staggering consequences.
Where was that?
And extreme accountability.
That's really good.
And that's a great point, because like
American Military News.
a lot of young people hit me up and they're like, "Well, I want to go get in combat. Who's in the combat? I want to go get my gun on and go get." I'm like, I get that. Like, a lot of us did that. It was, don't get me wrong, going to war and being on a special operations team is fun. I'm not gonna say it's not. And there is some exciting aspects of it. What's not fun is when you're going to get your gun on and your buddy next to you gets blown up. It stops being fun real fast. So, yeah, like that's what people they glamorize war, and they glamorize this thing, thinking that it's clean cut and it's like
black and white
and cool.
There's nobody that's gonna fall
because they see all of our pictures of us deployed and they're like, "Oh, they're so badass, they're so cool." Yeah, sure, there's some cool aspects of it, but it gets real not cool real fast, and you when you've got, I mean, I don't want to get too dark, but when you got a lot of dead friends, it changes your perspective on how cool war is.
Things like Memorial Day are
Right.
great, yeah. But that's a really important point. Like, it requires life-changing decisions in the moment. It requires somebody with experience to make those kinds of life-changing decisions in the moment.
And he had it, yeah.
Well, I think there's been no evidence put forth by the prosecution to support any of these charges. Number one, the additional research that I did, going back to what we discussed earlier with him being such a stellar performer, they interviewed the Iraqi commander of the partner force that was on the ground during the operation, that was standing there when all this was going down, and both of the Iraqi, the commander and the XO, both said that he was one of the most professional special operations guys that they'd ever worked with, and that yes, he indeed was very hard on his men and expected a lot.
It's like almost every team chief that I've ever met.
Right. Yeah. So I think that says a lot about the situation. And then Congressman Duncan Hunter did an interview, and I didn't catch the date or when it was released. A local news station in San Diego interviewed him, and he talked about seeing a video that was presented by Gallagher's brother, basically showing what happened, and it showed Chief Gallagher rendering aid to this fighter, and that he was having trouble breathing. So Chief Gallagher's he's a SOCM medic, so he was putting in a crike, and he cut his throat with a scalpel to put the crike in, and then was cutting off his pants because he was bleeding out of his legs. And Congressman Duncan Hunter said he saw this. They showed it to a bunch of other congressmen, and everybody left the room basically with all sharing the same opinion that this basically exonerates all these charges.
That was recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the bottom of that first page.
It's sad to the fact that this has to get presidential attention to get resolved.
I think it's disgusting that it's even
the fact that we're even talking about
right, that the Navy even let this become a case. They basically took one of their star performers and crucified him.
Well, somebody took one of their star performers, and I guarantee you that's why this is like complete propaganda against Trump. What can we do to make him look like the bad guy?
Of course, again, whether he is guilty or not, he has the right to a fair trial, and to all of our opinions of him should be made solely on his achievements, not his charges. And that's kind of that's what we've been looking at this whole time. And yeah, man, it's sad that it's been this long and he's been locked up for this long and
indefinitely, actually.
Yeah, and that is taking the president of the United States to basically come down and say enough is enough. To the DOD, he has to come down and say enough is enough, and in this, so this guy can get back with his family.
People disagree with Trump's idea of that, but in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, it states that the president has power to grant pardons for offenses against the United States.
Well, you can disagree with the president all you want. He's a freaking president.
But he can do whatever. Like, he has the right to do that.
Absolutely.
So
but it shouldn't even, like as Ali said, it should never have even gotten to this.
No.
So there's a bunch of support links down below.
His wife's Instagram, she constantly is posting
Better
updates.
Business.
Yeah. Better_business_babe.
And we'll put all those below.
Yeah, I think one thing too before we wrap is just to maybe bring up and start having the conversation about maybe the UCMJ need like the procedures under which servicemen are charged. It might be time to look at that antiquated system, because one of the things that really sticks out to me, like looking through all these notes, is the due process. I mean, he was.
Well, we know being in, if you get in trouble in the military, you're guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You're guilty.
And they can
until
right.
Super wrong.
They just hold you as long as they want to. They just basically do whatever they want. I mean, that's not. It's kind of a contradiction in terms, because that's not the country that I signed up to go risk my life and protect, that does that to its citizens. Those are the type of countries we go liberate people from, that just lock people up indefinitely.
But thank you for your service.
Right.
You also didn't sign any of those rights away. I know that's a big thing, and I wrote it in the notes that's a big thing that we say when we're in. Like, you signed the right to do that. Like, there's a lot of things you didn't sign the right to away. You know.
Right.
Innocent until proven guilty is one of them, and the right to a fair trial, which he's kind of getting denied both.
Well, hashtag free Eddie. He definitely has my support, and I would imagine everybody's support here. But you guys weigh in as well. Drop your comments below. We're gonna share all of this information below, and then link his wife's Instagram, so you guys can go show support to her. And welcome back to the Harbor Site. We want to keep doing these and trying to educate people on our opinions, not fake news or some bloated random stuff. Just dudes sitting around a table that have done it. Controversial topics.
We want to break them down.
I want to break them down and tell you what real people think. Brian, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just thanks for having me come out. I enjoyed the topic.
Again?
Yes.
For the first time?
Again, for the first time.
Oh, he did that one too for the YouTube shooting, but that was like long distance.
That was on my channel. That wasn't the Harbor Site.
Yeah, you guys called me when I was like going to school in San Francisco, and we talked about that.
YouTube shut it down, remember?
Yeah.
They shut that video down.
Yeah. They didn't want to talk about that.
They didn't want to talk about that video. But appreciate you guys' support. All our links below. If you want to support the Patreon to keep this thing going, please do. And we'll just start name dropping you guys in the videos. And then let us know what else you guys want to talk about in future videos. Anything else?
That's it.
Comment the topics.
Cheers, and we'll see you guys next time.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day.